All other city codes will need to be met. If the case is approved, your variance will expire 2 years from the date of the decision. If your case is continued, it will be continued to either next month's VRB board agenda or the next available position in an upcoming VRB board agenda. If the case is denied, you may wish to have the Variance Review Board's decision appealed by the City Council. You must file a petition for review of the board's decision within 14 days of the written decision. You will not be able to pull any permits until after the 14-day review period has passed. Your cooperation in ensuring that this meeting is run smoothly is greatly appreciated. Can I have a motion from one of the board members to approve the meeting minutes from last month's meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, let's vote. Everybody in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the minutes have been approved. At this time, I will ask legal staff to confirm whether there are any ex parte communications or conflicts.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Susan Johnson, from the Legislative Department. At this time, I'd just like to ask the board members if any of them have had any ex parte communications with respect to any item on the agenda this evening. Hearing none, I'd like to ask you all to state whether or not you have any conflicts of interest on any matter that's on the agenda before you this evening. There are none. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Ms. Madhu, are there any changes to the agenda that you wish to address at this time?
No, sir.
Okay, well then let's go ahead and swear in. All right, if you plan to speak this evening, please, if you plan to speak at all, at any point, if there's any chance that you might speak this evening, please stand and be sworn.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Good evening. Jane Madhu, Development Coordination. The first case presented before the board this evening is VRB 2232. The property owner is Sung Hoon Yi, and the property is addressed at 3117 West Knights Avenue. It is zoned RS50, residential single family. And the variance request before the board this evening is to reduce the rear and east side yard setback from 5 feet to 0 feet for a pool screen enclosure. The code section in reference is section 27-290.5 for screen enclosures, having their setbacks at 5 feet for the sides and the rear. This, excuse me, this is an aerial showing the subject property. It's an interior lot in the USF planning district in City of Tampa. This is a site plan showing the proposed area of work. The pool is already existing, and the green area shown there is the proposed pool enclosure. And that is what the variance request is for, reducing the setbacks from 5 feet to 0 feet. They have provided drawings of what that pool enclosure would look like, the structural drawings. This was reviewed by Natural Resources and found consistent with conditions. Transportation found them consistent as well. Right-of-way found them inconsistent because there is a 9.5-foot easement on the property, and it is possible that the pool enclosure may be encroaching in the easement. Stormwater also reviewed and approved with conditions. The memo for stormwater was included in the staff report. The applicant has provided pictures showing the existing pool and the patio that surrounds that pool. And more pictures showing the subject area. We have received no letters of objection or support for this variance request. The board shall consider section 27-80 in the decision regarding this variance request and all the criteria stated therein. If there are any questions, staff will be available.
Okay, petitioners here, come on up. You'll have 10 minutes. Please state your name, your address, and confirm that you've been sworn.
Yes. Oh, no, I'm okay. I can you give me my stuff? Thank you. Hi, my name is Sung Yi, and I am the homeowner for 3117 West Nights Avenue, Tampa, Florida. And
And you've been sworn?
I have not been sworn. That's what I was about to say. I have not been sworn yet. Oh, no, I have just been sworn. I'm
Okay.
sorry, as a
Good.
group, so yes.
Good. Okay, you have 10 minutes. Please proceed. You explain to us the hardship and why we can grant what you're
Oh,
asking.
okay, great. So we are new to Tampa, so we came about 2 years ago, and we have been homeowners at this particular address for now a little over a year. And originally, we bought the place. One of the reasons why we bought the place is because it is a saltwater pool of decent size, because my son does suffer actually from a medical condition called, I'm sorry, eczema. And so I did bring some pictures to show, his condition. We believe that the salt water actually does help alleviate his conditions. Oh, sorry, okay. Oh, okay, so. Yeah, so for example, okay, oh, that's good. So yeah, so the 3 areas of his body that's affected are his neck, his legs, and also, Leah, can you change show the other one? And his arms. And so, and unfortunately, one thing we did not estimate properly is there's quite a lot of mosquitoes in our area, and also he's allergic to them. So obviously our use of the pool is quite limited, and so we would like to expand our ability to use the pool, specifically by my son, primarily by building this pool cage. And so that is the specific hardship that we'd like to put in front of the variance board. And regarding the storm weather, I don't know if I should address that now, or, the drain, or if you have any questions on that. I've also brought some additional pictures. Leah, if you could show, and this is something I should have sent to Ms. Jane Madu earlier, but realize my omission is in the back. So why don't we just show one picture, one of them? Okay, so that's the distance between the drain. I believe that's in the storm weather drain memorandum, and the pool. And so I do not believe, and I also spoke with the contractors, that the cage would actually impede the water flow into the drain, nor would it in any way hinder the accessibility to the storm weather drain if the city needed access to it. So, by definition, the cage, is not going to expand upon the horizontal dimensions of the pool. It's a vertical structure, so we believe that there should be no infringement on accessibility or water flow. Oh, no, that's it. I think that should be sufficient.
Okay, is there anything else you wanted to share with us, or does that conclude your presentation this evening?
I think that concludes my presentation, but I can answer any questions by the board members if they have any.
Okay, we'll have an opportunity for board questions in just a second. If that concludes your presentation, let's see if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to speak about this petition. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to talk about this one? No? All right, seeing none, I will open it up for board questions. Does anyone on the board have any questions?
Looking at the site plan, it looks like you have a considerable amount of land between the edge of the pool and the side yard. And you're proposing to put the screen all the way up against the fence on the side yard. I assume that's because you have pavers there already. But that's an encroachment on your neighbor. Have you spoken to those neighbors and the neighbors behind you?
I don't believe any of my neighbors are here, but I did, provide notice to all of I believe it was about, everyone within, I think, 250 yards. I believe that was the rule. So everyone has gotten a mailing. And also I have posted, a sign in front of my house right by the road next to my mailbox, which is in clear view. So, and also we have not, it's a pretty tight-knit community on my road. I have not been approached yet, but I did get a call from a gentleman saying he was okay with it. And so, but that's about it. So I have not received any objections from anyone after giving them notice, and I did send that out, I believe, about a month ago.
Okay, because my concern is that
Sure.
a pool cage is a tall structure,
Yes.
and if it's right up against somebody's property line, it's kind of bordering on their space, and if that neighbor moves or whatever, then the next owner inherits that, because it's going to stay with your land, regardless of who owns the property.
Okay.
And you seem to have a few feet behind the pool to the rear,
Yes.
and a lot more feet to the side yard, that you could reduce the amount that this screen encroaches on the neighboring properties.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask if there's any opportunity to not go to the property line, because it seems like an extreme ask to do so.
Okay.
And also, there was mention of an easement in the rear. I think it was in the rear.
I think that, are you talking about specifically related to the storm weather?
I don't know.
Okay.
Where's the easement that they were discussing?
I think it's to the west of the pool.
Okay, does your
Yeah.
rear yard immediately adjacent to another neighbor's rear yard, or do you have an alley?
Oh, no, we do have we have fencing all around.
Sure,
Yeah, so,
but it's on the other side of your fence, your neighbor, or is there an alley that
no,
separates?
there's neighbors.
Okay.
Yes. But there is plenty of space in the rear of the pool. And to the right, it is closer to my neighbor, but he also, the couple has has a cage of their own as well. And ours will actually not be as vertically high as theirs, since I think they are sitting on a higher elevation. And to the left, where the storm weather drain is, as you saw from the picture that I just showed you, there is plenty of distance, I think, between where the paver ends and the fence. And I guess the most important thing there is that the wet, obviously it rains a lot in Tampa, as I found out, that it will not impede the drainage of the water, and I think that's pretty clear.
Sure.
From the picture.
I don't have any concern with the drainage. Then I do have a question for
Sure.
staff about the site plan. It looks like the property line is several feet short of the fence line. Is that what you see too on the site plan? Which is interesting.
Can I see the site plan? Yeah, that's the one with the drawing site plan. There's- Yeah. No. Oh, sorry. Oh, there it is.
You see how there's like there appears to be a wood fence, I don't
Yes,
see-
that's between my neighbor in the back, yes.
But your property stops short of the fence, several feet, right?
I believe that includes my property. No, I'm sorry. Up to the wood fence, I believe is my property. Is it, am I
Ms.
reading this
Madhu,
incorrectly?
how do you read that? This is an important question to answer, because a zero lot line in the back for the screen
Yeah.
is different from being 6 feet from a fence. You know what I mean? Do
Yeah,
your
but-
pavers touch the fence?
No, it does not.
How far are the pavers from the fence?
In the back, I would say it's maybe about 5 feet or so.
Yeah, so it looks like, from this survey at least, your property line stops at the edge of the pavers, and you do
Oh.
not own the land to the fence. That's just the way I'm interpreting this
Okay.
plan, if I'm reading it correctly. That's why I was asking. Yes, okay. So you don't apparently own the last 5 feet of the yard, which is, I guess, news for you, but it's also kind of helps my question, because you're not going to be right up next to the neighbor's yard. You're going to be 5 feet from it
Okay,
in the rear. So my concern really is just on the side yard then.
okay.
It looks like you've got a number of feet, at least probably 4 feet from the edge of the spa to the edge of the deck. and you're proposing to build the screen up to match the corner of your house, which looks like the house is right on the fence almost.
Yes, that's right, on the right side, yes, on the east side.
So I guess that's an existing condition.
Yes, that, I have not changed that at all, that's as is.
Yeah, it's interesting it was able to get built that way. Probably a split lot. Okay, all right, well,
So
I guess
can I
that
ask the
changes things
board
for
what
you.
I need to do? Because it is really surprising to me. I did not know that, I mean, for all intents and purposes, we are, the fence I thought was the dividing line, the wood fence.
Mhm.
And, you know, I don't know if I need to go and change the survey or confirm that that's,
think the
you know, my
application's
land
correct.
or,
it's probably all right. It's just probably you
Yes.
didn't realize that was
no, I didn't.
probably, that's probably, I don't know, an easement or a right of way of some sort that you weren't aware of,
Okay,
that you're allowed to use. You just don't own it.
sure.
Usually it's in the front of the house on the roadway. That's the
Okay.
difference. You know, most properties have this, but it's on the road. So in terms of my concerns, then I guess I don't have any more now that we've talked through that.
Are there any other questions from the board? All right, seeing none, you have 3 minutes for rebuttal. Any additional information or any response that you want to give to anything that was discussed up to this point. 3 minutes, however you want to use it.
I really guess, you know, what, since I wasn't aware of the backyard or the rear yard situation, what I need to do as next steps to I guess to allay any sort of concerns that the board has, to allow this variance to request to be approved. So that's really the only thing that I have, because I'm actually quite surprised that that's not my land, yes.
Well, nothing we can do about that at this
Okay.
time, but, okay. If there's nothing else you want to share?
Sure.
All right, then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and open it up for a motion from the board.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I want to sort of show you from the staff report here on the
Certainly.
drainage easement.
Certainly.
Should I step back? Oh, okay.
Who's gonna access the overhead?
Thank you, Susan Johnson, Velez Legal Department. So this is the site plan that came as part of the stormwater memo. So you can see right here to the
That's
left here.
really tiny.
can't really
I know, it's
see
really
it.
tiny, but here's a bit,
Can you hit the zoom button?
there is the drainage easement that you can see there in yellow. And so it looks like there may be a slight encroachment already into the decking that's there. You can see in that, the green area there, right in here, that there may already be an encroachment. And they're proposing to bring the screen all the way out to the edge of the existing decking, which would cause a further encroachment. And so stormwater is opposed to that, and I'm looking at their portion of the staff report. It says, no permanent improvements such as foundations, pools, walls, or buildings may be constructed in any city drainage easement or right-of-way. And they're asking that the submitted plans be revised accordingly. And they also state that a hold will be placed on the issuance of the building permit until the site and building plans are revised, so that it shows the actual drainage easement, and it shows that there are no further encroachments into the existing drainage easement.
Is the drainage easement 10 feet along the west side? Has that been confirmed?
9.5.
9.5,
Yes, that's been confirmed by stormwater.
okay.
Yeah, and we can see 9.2 from
So
the fence
it's
to the
probably
house.
worthwhile to note that even if this gets approved, if there needs to be repairs and they need to access that 9.5 feet, you will have to remove your decking or your cage or whatever may be there, because our approval does not supersede any underlying easement.
Well,
Are you suggesting that we have a condition in any approval that we make? And what would the condition be as your recommendation?
that prior to permitting, that they revise their site plan and show the actual drainage easement, and that there are no further encroachments into the drainage easement by this pool structure. I'm sorry, the screen enclosure does not encroach into the drainage easement.
You know, the concerning thing on that plan you just showed is it looks like the water's edge might be in that easement.
Correct.
If so, only by inches, you know, so maybe not
Right.
so bad, but it looks really close.
It does. I don't,
Well, that's not really for us, I guess. Okay.
Okay. So, is there a motion from the board regarding this petition?
I will attempt a motion. I move that variance request for case VRB 2232 located at 3117 West Knights Avenue as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a reduction in rear and east yard setbacks from 5 feet to 0 feet with encroachment for eaves and gutters with the following condition: that prior to permit, they revise the site plan to accurately show the easement and comply with city's requirements in regards to encroachment of that easement. And that said variance as condition be granted upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of a necessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 2780 of the city code. Specifically that this is an existing pool that they're trying to enclose due to a practical difficulty, and that the rear yard encroachment is actually 5 feet short of the fence line of the yard, and that the side yard encroachment is in line with the side of the existing home.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Does anyone wish to discuss any piece? No? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor of the motion to approve, say aye. All those opposed? Okay. Motion passes 4-1 with condition. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
The next case before the board is VRB 2238. The property owners are Stephen Coney, I'm sorry? Oh, and Allison Felix. The property is addressed at 4207 West Dale Avenue. This is zoned residential single-family RS75. The variance request is to reduce the east side yard setback from 7 feet to 4 feet and 4 inches. And this is for the construction of an addition over an existing attached garage. The code section in reference is section 27-156, and the district setbacks for RS75 are 25 feet for the front, 20 feet for the rear, and 7 feet for the sides. This is an aerial showing the subject property. It's an interior lot in the South Tampa Planning District in the city of Tampa. This is the site plan that was provided by the applicant showing the existing home and the attached garage that is existing. As it is currently, it doesn't meet the setbacks, so they are vesting the setbacks with this addition. This was reviewed by Natural Resources and found inconsistent with comments that they provide elevations and overall height for the garage addition to determine possible impacts to the property line live oak, and any pruning that is required would have to be in accordance with ANSI A300 standards. It was reviewed by Transportation, found consistent, and reviewed by Right-of-Way and found consistent as well. We have received no letters of support or objection for this variance request from the general public, and there are no staff memos that were submitted. In the determination of this variance request before the board, you shall consider section 27-80, the criteria for the approval or the decision concerning the variance request, and staff be available if you have any questions.
Ms. Madhu, was there a staff report for this one that went
There
in?
was a staff report, but none of the staff reviewers attached any memos, so we didn't have any memo from the staff concerning
okay.
their findings, but there was a staff report.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is the applicant here? Come on up, state your
The
name.
applicant will have to be sworn in.
Oh, okay. Is there anyone else who needs to be sworn this evening who hasn't been sworn? If you might speak, if there's a chance you might say something tonight, and you haven't been sworn, let's get you sworn in.
Please raise your right hand.
Yes, sir.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Okay,
My name is AJ Sharbiani. I represent the developer, HGC Design Build. Thank you. Just
I need your name, your address, and if you've been sworn.
AJ Sharbiani. I reside at 332 Sunnyside Road in Tampa, Florida, and I have been
Terrific.
sworn.
Okay,
Thank you.
10 minutes. Go ahead, take it
you.
away.
I have some images here. Hopefully you can see it. If the staff could help me out with this device, would be great. Okay.
You're doing great.
All right. Apologies. I'm still getting used to digital versus in person. So what you see, it's kind of a repeat of what the staff just mentioned, the current survey of the property and the front elevation of the structure. On the right side, there's the garage. As it was mentioned, the garage currently encroaches into the side setback. Our client wishes to build on top of the garage. We're looking at about 580 square feet of air-conditioned space that will be accessible from inside through a staircase, and the space below the staircase will house a pool bath that will be accessible from the cage. Between the property, between the garage wall and the fence, there's currently an oak tree about 27 inches tall. We have retained an arborist to take a look at the condition of the tree, and based on what has been concluded in the report, the tree is kind of a moderate fair condition. For the purpose of this expansion, as you can see here, the limb that is on the right side here, on the left side here, encroaches over the roof structure, and trimming it or pruning it or removing it would take the tree off balance. This is currently the position of the tree, its location to the foundation of the garage as well. So what we're proposing is really just to build on top of the garage and provide them with the additional square footage that they're hoping for. We've taken liberty of providing elevation for this addition here, and we try to stay as consistent as possible with the existing architecture of the house. So that's all I have to present to you this evening.
Okay, does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, sir.
All right, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak about this petition? Seeing none, I'll open it up to any member of the board for questions.
Just for my own clarification, the existing garage already is into the side setback. It's
Correct.
4 feet 4 inches.
Yes, sir.
And that was per design, and I'm assuming either that side setback did not exist at the time of construction, or there was already a variance for that encroachment? I mean,
Yeah,
it's there and it got approved, so.
It's currently there.
So here we are. So we're not actually trying to go any further
Correct.
into a
We
setback than what
stay
was already
within-
there.
Correct. We
Okay.
stay within the existing footprint of the structure.
Thank you.
Thank
Go ahead.
I have a question for Ms. Madhu. Could you repeat the inconsistencies that Natural Resources had? There was a couple, I think, and I forgot the first few.
Right, so, Natural Resources said to provide the elevations and the overall height for the garage addition to determine possible impact to the live oak, along that property line, and that any pruning would have to be in accordance with ANSI A300 standards.
I'm sorry, Susan Johnson, Velez, Legal Department. I believe Ms. Madhu said too during her presentation that they're seeking to vest the location of the existing garage.
Oh, okay.
So if there is a variance.
Oh, okay, so there's not an existing variance.
No, it is my, interpretation that that was previously a detached garage, and that is would have met the setbacks, but then it was attached to the house and then.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you have more questions?
No, that was it.
Okay. So do you know when the garage was attached?
That's, the information's not available to us at this point.
Okay, wasn't, can you confirm that it wasn't attached by the homeowner, the current owner who's making the application?
We don't have that information.
So you don't know if it was attached by them, or you can
I don't-
confirm
I-
that it wasn't
let-
attached by them?
Let me clarify. I do not believe during the time that they owned the property that they've done any work or attached it. If it was done, it was prior to them purchasing the property.
Okay, you're telling us it was prior to their acquisition?
Yes.
Okay. And the homeowner in the back is shaking their head vociferously saying, yes, that's true.
That's,
Okay. All right. Is, to the extent that any construction is going to go forward that may impact the tree, are you willing to bear with any restrictions that Natural Resources puts upon you as it relates to that live oak?
if I take you back to this other image that I presented, I don't know if you're ready. Oh, here we go.
Which one are you trying to show us, the foliage or the trunk?
Both. First, the trunk, its proximity to the foundation of the garage.
Okay.
And also, going back to this image, how this tree, the way the trunks are leaning both on the neighbor side and on the garage. As part of our project, we would like to remove the tree. And,
Well, that's
We
something
can't grant that?
we can't give you.
Right. I'm just saying that would be preferable, but if not, we would trim it as best as possible without impacting it. However, we feel removing any limbs would kind of create an imbalance in the way the tree structure is, and would kind of put the neighbor at risk.
Well, and that's kind of the point of my question,
Right.
is, I mean, we can grant you that, the request to vest, and we can grant you what you're asking for.
Right.
But what I'm saying is there may be restrictions with Natural Resources as to what you can trim and can't trim from that tree. And so if we were to place a condition as to compliance with Natural Resources on that, is that acceptable? Is that something that you could work with?
I believe that would be acceptable, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay. Well, with that then, you have 3 minutes for rebuttal to address anything else that you see fit to address.
I think at this point I'm done. I appreciate your diligence. I'm
Okay.
happy to answer any question you may have.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, then I will close the public hearing and open it up for a motion from the board. Does anyone have a motion that they'd like to make?
I'll make a motion. I move that the variance request for case BRB 22-38, located at 4207 Westdale Avenue, as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing, for a reduction of the east yard setback from 7 feet to 4 feet 4 inches, with an encroachment for eaves and gutters, with the following condition: that the property owner comply with restrictions and conditions provided by the Natural Resources Department. That said variance as conditioned be granted based on the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-80 of the city code, specifically that the hardship did not result from the actions of the applicant. The agent confirmed that the applicant did not connect the garage to the house, which precipitated the need for the vesting of the current garage location. And additionally, that the variance, if granted, will not substantially interfere with or injure the health, safety, or welfare of others, as the additional encroachment is going to be located over top of the current garage structure, and therefore the encroachment isn't increasing at all.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion to be had on the motion? No? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor of the motion to approve with conditions, say aye. All those opposed? All right, you're approved 4-1. Thank you, have a good evening.
The next case before the board is VRB 2240. The property owners are Alexandra Rosas, and the property is addressed at 365 Blanca Avenue. This is zoned RS75 residential single family. The variance request is to reduce the rear yard setback from 12 feet to 1.75 feet and reduce the eve-to-eve separation from 10 feet to 2 feet and 11 inches. And this is for the construction of a new garage and to maintain existing separation between existing structures. The code section in reference is section 27-156 that has the setback requirements for the RS75 district as 25 feet in the front, 12 feet for the rear, 15 feet for the corner, and 7 for the side. And the minimum separation in the RS75 zoning district is 10 feet between principal and accessory structure measured eve to eve. This is an aerial showing the subject property. It's a corner lot in the Central Tampa zoning planning district in the city of Tampa. And this is the existing conditions on the property currently. There's an existing garage that is currently detached, and they have 2 accessory structures currently. This is the proposal, that's where the new garage would go. It would be connected to the existing single-family residence, and then they are also requesting to vest the building separation between the principal and the accessory structure in the rear. These are the elevations showing the garage and the addition to the existing single-family residence. This was reviewed by Natural Resources and found consistent with conditions. It was reviewed by Transportation and found consistent, and right-of-way found them consistent as well. Natural Resources has the condition that at the time of permitting, this would meet the tree and landscape code. This are pictures that have been provided by the applicant showing the existing home and the garage as it exists currently. We have received no letters of support or objection for this variance request from the general public. In the determination of the variance request before the board this evening, the board shall consider section 27-80 and the criteria for the decision concerning the variance request before the board. If you have any questions, I'll be available.
State your name, your address and confirm that you've been sworn for us, please.
Good evening. Just loading the PowerPoint. This is Jamie Mayer representing the applicant from the law firm Hillward Henderson, 101 East Kennedy Boulevard, Suite 3700 in Tampa, and I have been sworn. Okay, perfect. So thank you for the excellent presentation. And of course, I'm just going to expand on this a bit. So there are 3 structures existing on the site. There's the primary home structure, an accessory structure, and the detached garage. And the garage really is the subject of this request. The actual dimensions on the site that we're requesting, the rear yard from 12 to 1.75 feet, and the eave-to-eave separation from 10 to 2 foot 11, are the existing dimensions on the site right now and are not going to change. This is really a matter of an operation of code by attaching the garage, because the detached garage was approved by a prior variance, and I'll get into that in a minute here. What that variance was and why it was necessary. And then, of course, we're seeking to recognize the fact that the existing home structure and the accessory structure are pretty close together, and that's how they've been for many, many years. So in 1995, a prior owner discovered, when he tried to pull a permit, that somebody in 1984, and even an owner prior to him, had performed a lot split that resulted in a perpetual zoning violation relative to the as-built conditions of the site. You can see from the historic aerials that there was nothing in between the applicant's property, and as you can see, all 3 structures were there in 1980 and through all times relevant. And then this lot split occurred in 1984, and a house was built on the lot, pretty much sealing the deal and significantly reducing the setbacks relative to the as-built structures on the property, including that detached garage. A prior variance board approved a variance for that setback in the exact same dimensions that we're asking for today, 12 feet to 1.75 feet, to correct the otherwise perpetual zoning violation that was created. Likely, the eve-to-eve separation should have been recognized during this prior variance, and so we recognize that and are raising it now and seeking to have it reflected in this request. Here are the photos you saw earlier. An inspection report showed that this little garage is not in good shape. It's, as you can see from the thermal imaging that the inspector did, the roof leaks, the foundation is so rotted a screwdriver can easily go through it. That's not normal, apparently. And it also leaks and floods. So the goal is it needs to be replaced, and in doing so, Ms. Rosas would like to attach it because she is one of, I think there's maybe only one other house in the entire surrounding area that does not have an attached garage. You already saw these. Again, this is the existing site layout. I've kind of got an arrow here pointing to where that closest point to the boundary line is, the 1.75 feet. That remains the same. The garage just gets a little longer internally to the site, but the closest point does not change, and it connects to the primary structure. Here is a close-up of the eve-to-eve separation. So as you can see, again, it's the existing structures. It's not the new attached garage portion that is too close, if you will, to the accessory structure. It's these structures that have been there for many years. I know you're all very familiar with the variance criteria, so I'm just going to go through them as quickly as I can. This site is burdened by a practical difficulty that is unique and singular. The lot split in 1984 created a permanent burden that has burdened owners already and is burdening owners today. And the eve-to-eve separation is also an existing condition that even predates the lot split. As is clear from what I've said already, this is not a self-created hardship. It was done many years and many owners ago. This request will not interfere with the rights of others. The eve-to-eve separation is completely internal to the site and is not going to change. The new garage, as attached, maintains the same setback as the existing garage. Ms. Rosas did speak with her adjacent neighbor, who is in the lot that was created by the split, and at the time they discussed that neighbor did not have an objection. I don't know if she's here tonight or not. And I believe a neighbor to the north expressed concerns about how it might affect his property. As you saw from the site plan, the northern area of the property is not going to change at all. and certainly none of the dimensions in the site are gonna change. It's consistent with the code and the comprehensive plan. This is compatible with the surrounding uses. Single-family residential homes with an overwhelming number of attached garages. And finally, this variance will result in substantial justice being done. Without a variance, no owner of this site can really make any meaningful improvements to the property without triggering a need for a variance. We're maintaining the existing dimensions of the site. We're basically updating a previously approved variance, and we're not increasing the degree of anything that's going on here. It will afford Ms. Rosa's rights that are enjoyed by her surrounding similarly situated neighbors of having an attached garage. And although this point is not in and of itself a hardship, of course, because hardships are, as I've established, singular to the site, Ms. Rosa's is a doctor. She works late nights. She comes home at weird hours. She has to walk from her garage to her house. She had to file a police report recently for a break into her car, and there was a woman actually with an armed attempted kidnapping on her street. So again, although that in and of itself I know is not a hardship, this is an operation of code here. It is singular and unique to the site, but this is a very significant impact on her quality of life. So again, where this request does not increase the degree of any variance on the site, it affords her rights enjoyed by similarly situated neighbors, and it meets all of the variance criteria. We respectfully request your approval. Our architect is here to answer any questions, as am I. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
Wonderful. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak about this petition this evening? Come on up. You have 3 minutes to address your issues.
Hi, my name is Joseph Guayardo. I reside at 160 Cypress Avenue,
And you've been sworn.
and I've been sworn.
Terrific. Go ahead.
We have no objections as far as the rear setback of 1.75 feet. It's already existing. We have no objections to the structure being,
Yes. Okay, you said you'd been sworn in?
well, I was in the room when you sworn the other gentleman, so I mean, like,
Did you stand up and?
no.
Well, like I said, if you had any intention of speaking, wish you'd been sworn. Let's go ahead and swear you in.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes, I do.
Okay,
All right.
please continue.
The only concern that we have, and the eave-to-eave separation that exists right now, we figured that is a grandfathered in, being that it's been there for so many years. Our concern is that we would like to see that the eave-to-eave separation of the new structure be limited to 7 feet as the drawing that I was given by the homeowner when I met her a couple weeks ago.
Okay, does that conclude?
And that's our only concern is that the new structure, eave-to-eave separation, be limited to 7 feet instead of the 2 feet 11 inches of the existing eve-to-eve separation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak this evening? Okay, is there any question, does anyone on the board have any questions?
Interesting question.
Apparently my watch has questions. Ms. Johnson, go ahead.
I have a question. Could you put the image, just showing the front of the property next to the adjacent?
This one?
I think there's like another, that'll do. So, I'm looking at the garage elevation south, in the plan set. So this is actually a 2-story structure. Is that correct?
No, so the windows are decorative. So at 20 feet, that's not a full 2 stories. Because 15 is like the standard 1-story.
But it's not gonna look the same as it's higher.
Right, yes, that's correct.
And also, and I can't really tell, but it also looks like the connection to the house, and maybe I'm wrong, but is that also a higher breezeway as well than what we currently see?
let me ask our architect if you
Okay.
don't mind. And you have to be sworn. Apologize, he arrived late.
If you would state your name, your address, and confirm that you've been sworn.
Well, I haven't been
He's not,
sworn
he
yet.
arrived late, yes. We apologize.
Yes. So the question was about the connection?
State your name,
Oh,
name and address.
Nate Meyer, 5510 North Branch Avenue. Was, the question again was the height of the connection between the existing house and,
Yeah,
the
I was just
new-
trying to understand how this actually changes from the street front look. From the plan view, everything looks about the same, but when I look at it, this section, and look at the front of the house and the streetscape, it looks like there are some changes. There's some elevation changes to the garage itself. There's another floor added, and then it looks like maybe the breezeway is also higher, but that was that's the second question.
the breezeway, I don't know if we have the elevation view that we could
Do you
bring up,
have
but.
it? I have it on paper, I can show you.
I guess my concern is that this, the look where there's so much facade next to the house, typically garages are set back, so there's like a hierarchy between house and garage, and now there's two tall structures right next to each other. It just, to me, I was wondering just the sense of the streetscape that will now be created.
Well, I would say, the new garage steps down from the height of the main house,
Can we stop
and then,
this? Sure, I'll just show you what he's drawn here. So,
that's,
okay, so you can see this is that part, it's not, the breezeway does not designed to be higher. Here. So it's stepped down.
So it's the same condition as it is now.
yeah, that's exactly, that breezeway back there kind of ties in. What you can't see in this view is, there's a lower portion of the roof in the back of the house, so to
Okay.
get all that to connect in, that's why that height is set there.
Right, okay.
Currently, there is no breezeway, because the garage is.
Well,
Okay.
there's a
But
lower,
there's
there's a
a-
lower roof and like a back stoop that you can't see in this drawing, but, so,
There's
those
a-
are related.
Projection that exists here, and the garage is coming back.
And
to
maybe
connect
I was
to the
getting
projection.
confused because the production is
Yeah.
so tight, right?
There was a picture that you showed actually, what showed the eave
yeah.
separations. That kind of shows the roof that we're trying to like tuck under.
Right. I'm not sure how to get back to that. Buttons back to the,
Back to the presentation.
yeah, PC, okay. Oh, thank you.
That was it actually,
Well,
unless you have a better one.
no, that's the only
That's-
picture I have, unfortunately. But again, so that's the projection is currently there in gray, and that's the part that you're
Right, so
seeing
the
is kind of-
higher obviously
Yeah,
would connect to
right.
the garage, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Did you have any, I know you're gonna have rebuttal time, but this is a question specifically. Do you have any response to the comment from the neighbor about the 7 feet request?
Yes, I actually want to make sure I understand what structure is being talked about, because then actually it's good that this particular image is on the screen. I don't know if y'all can see it still. So that part, the existing eave-to-eave separation, as he mentioned, that 2 foot 11 inches, that's not going to change, which he said he understood was grandfathered, or really actually we're asking for it to be recognized as a variance. The separation between the garage is 8 feet, so it's greater than 7 feet between the accessory structure and where the garage is kind of moving backwards internally into the site. Does that, and I think that was the question.
Well, we are in question section, so I could ask him to come back up
Sure.
and explain. Could you state your name again and then explain what your concern was?
My name is Joseph Guayardo. And with the drawings that were presented to us, like I said, a couple weeks ago, at the time that we were talking, we were told it was a one-story garage going in there. It looks like it's gonna be a two-story garage,
Yeah, or 1.5.
or 1.5. The concern is that it's 7 or 8 feet. I was just eyeballing it, basically. I didn't pull out any measuring tapes or have any drawings to go by. We're just wanting the structure to be as shown to us and represented by the homeowner as to where they were gonna place the new construction.
Can you put that on the screen so we can see it? Oh, we'll have to flip over. We're trying to figure out where the 7 feet you're concerned, on the north or on the side?
It would
So
be
that's
the back side of the garage.
the back side, okay.
When I say the back side, the side that's closest to my property.
The north
'Cause
side.
I'm right on the other side of the fence.
Okay. So you're talking about the separation between the existing building that they're not touching and the new garage?
We're talking, there's an out structure in the corner of the property that's
Yeah.
on their drawing.
Yeah.
And the new garage, that separation there right now, it looks to be 10 feet, except for a little building that's added to the back building, which reduces it to about 8. And I'm just ballparking these numbers. We just want to make sure that the new garage doesn't go back to the back of their house further.
Got it.
And that it just stays to where the drawing is. Because, like I said, we were told it was a one-story, and it seems to be a little bit, you could say 1.5.
Yeah, 20 feet or so.
Um,
Okay, I think I understand, and we will have them clarify that for you. I think that they're probably, it looks like they're about 8 feet now, so
Right.
probably good, but we'll have them
That'd be
clarify
fine,
that.
yeah.
So it sounds like we're talking about the north side of the garage, between the garage and the accessory structure. And I think you had a plan that showed that dimension at something around 8 feet,
Yes,
right there. I can't see it,
yeah.
but you're telling us that that
It
dimension
is
is
8 feet,
Okay,
and it's in the plans that the plans that are in the Acela record, that's what's on here.
okay. Okay,
And if it's not, it will be.
that was my
But it
question,
is.
thank you.
Okay, any other board questions? All right, seeing none, you have 3 minutes for rebuttal. Anything else you want to share with us?
Well, I was gonna use my time, if we hadn't already discussed it, to just make sure I understood what, the neighbors' concerns were. Otherwise, I don't think we have any other, additional comments to make, and again, respectfully request approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, I will close the public hearing and open it up for motion from the board, please.
Motion.
Please.
I move that the variance request for case VRB 22-40 for the property located at 365 Blanca Avenue be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a reduction in rear yard setback from 12 feet to 1.75 feet and reduce the eave-to-eave separation from 10 feet to 2 feet 11 inches. Based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship for practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-80 of the city's code. Specifically, that this was not a self-inflicted hardship. They're just trying to improve upon a decaying existing structure. They're also adding some additional security for the homeowner through connecting it to the existing building. Yeah, and it is unique and singular to the lot due to the split that was done back in 1984. Otherwise, this garage would be perfectly fine as it sits.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor of the motion to approve, say aye. All those opposed? Okay, your motion pass, your petition passes 4-1. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
All right, the last case before the board this evening is VRB 2245. The property owner is Oswaldo Rodriguez. This is addressed at 112 East Emily Street. This is zoned RS50, residential single family. And the variance request before the board this evening is to reduce the west side yard setback from 7 feet to 5 feet for an existing addition to a single family residence. And the code section in reference is section 27-156 that has the setbacks for the RS50 district as 20 feet in the front, 20 feet in the rear, and 7 feet on the sides. This is a work without permits, and so they're here to rectify that problem. And this is an aerial showing the subject property. This is the site plan provided by the applicant showing the existing single-family residence and the side setback at 5 feet on the west side. This was the original home, and here in gray is where you have the addition to the single-family residence. They've provided plans showing that addition and elevations showing what that looks like. This was reviewed by Natural Resources and found inconsistent with comments that they show a site plan highlighting the addition area and layout of the home, and that improvements cannot take place without a protective radii of the 2 grand trees on the site. The protective radius for the grand trees is 20 feet from the face of the tree, and that he is available for any questions should they have them. This was reviewed by right-of-way and found consistent. Transportation review was not required. If for the determination of the variance request before the board this evening, you shall consider section 27-80, the criteria for the decision for variance request. If the board has any questions, staff is available on hand.
Okay. Petitioner, come on up. State your name, your address, and confirm that you've been sworn for us, please.
My name is Rosana Rodriguez. My address is 112 East Emily Street, Tampa, Florida, 33603.
And you've been sworn?
I'm here because my house is 109 years old.
Oh, I'm sorry, did you confirm you've been sworn for us?
112.
No, not your address, ma'am. Can you just confirm that you've been sworn?
What?
That you've been sworn in?
Oh, yeah, I didn't.
Great. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
You have 10 minutes to explain to us your hardships.
Yeah. My house is 109 years old. When was built without closet, we add some closet in the master room and laundry and family room. But they don't have too much space. We trying to improve our house. That's the reason we put the addition in our house. Yeah, it's just to make our family more comfortable and to us.
Okay. You need to explain to us the hardships about your property so that we can understand what it is that you're asking for. I understand that there's work done without permits. I understand you want to expand and have more living space for your family. You talked about your 109-year-old home, which is helpful to understand. Can you give us some understanding of why the addition needs to be where it is, how that impacts the rest of the property, how that impacts your neighbors, things along those lines.
There are no impact to the public or the neighborhood because of safety. They are in harmony with the city Tampa plan and code. We want to be, in order to have better living conditions, 12 houses. The way our house is sit on the laws stand so rear of the house in narrow that the front.
Okay. Did you read to us what's in your petition? Maybe that'll help.
Did I read it?
Yeah, why don't you talk about, I thought you talked about a little bit the slanting of the position of the home. You said it's slanted. In your petition, it says the house is slanted, so the rear of the house is narrower than the front.
Yes.
And so, can you give us just a little understanding about that and how that impacts what you've built and what you're trying to build?
There are no impact to safety of the public because it's behind of the house. And just I'm asking for the 7 to 5 feet to make the addition more comfortable, you know, putting the walk-in closet and laundry room.
Okay, does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
All right. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak about this petition? Seeing none, is there anyone on the board who would like to ask a question from the petitioner? Okay, Mr. Pastor. Ms. Rodriguez, you may want to come back up.
Did you have a contractor build this for you?
Yes, the architect is working with us.
Right, but did you have an architect or a contractor build this for you?
Yeah, I gave to Miss Madu all the information with the architect.
Mm-hmm. But who built that? Who built the addition?
The architect. My husband, he's working with the construction.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, under the instruction of the architect, we are doing.
Are you under construction now?
Not yet. I'm waiting for the permission to finish.
Oh, okay, so you are under construction, but you're not done.
Not done.
Okay. Okay.
Can you tell us a little bit about, so, you know, I see that your original house was pretty small, and it was situated kind of on the left side of the lot.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about why the addition was put, you know, where it is?
It's in the left side because the right side is the driveway, and the street we live is narrow, and when we receive some visit of family or friends, we need more space to park the car behind. That's the reason we put it in the left side.
Okay, so I see on the site plan that, you know, if you were to, like, take your house and just on the right-hand side, if you were to take it and just extend it straight back,
Mm-hmm.
it looks like the new addition kind of juts in a little bit.
Yes.
Why is that?
When we bought the house, has the additional. Yeah, for a long, long time.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. You have 3 minutes of rebuttal time if you would like to use it for any purpose. Okay. With that, I will close the public hearing and open it up for a motion from the board. Anyone?
All right. I move that the variance request for case VRB 22-45 for the property located at 112 East Emily Street be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a reduction of the west side yard setback from 7 feet to 5 feet based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and of this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-80 of the city code. That this difficulty is unique and singular to this property due to the age of the home being very small, with very small closets built for its year. Additionally, that due to the narrowness of the lot and the location of the driveways, the home has to be pushed closer to that westerly boundary line. This does also not create any safety issues or welfare issues for the neighboring properties, as it is going to be a similar distance from the side setback that exists for the existing home. And I believe substantial justice can be done for helping this home become a little more livable in size for modern families.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
I guess I'm a little confused why the house is not centered over the original house lines. And that's my conundrum. I understand looking at the dimensions, even if it was aligned, it still probably wouldn't meet the 7 feet, but it'd probably be around 6. So I'm tending not to go with it just for that reason, that maybe they could have done a little bit better to line it up with the house and really make that case for a hardship. Just throwing it out there.
Okay, great, thank you. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed? All right. Motion passes 3-2. Have a great evening. And any further business? Oh, do we need to elect a new vice chair? Lynn was our vice chair. Okay.
Also, we've got 2 alternates and open spots. Is there any way or reason to make them permanent members because they show up every month?
Well, we can't do that.
We can't.
No,
But
but
I'm
the
asking,
city can.
you know, legal if they
Yeah.
could make recommendations or.
All of them. We only have 3 members.
We got a builder missing, we have a civic member missing, 2 civic members and an arborist missing.
I submitted my application today for the city civic representative position.
Wonderful. We'll take her off the list. Then we have 1 alternate left.
So I think there's 6.
There's 7 permanent spots, right? And only 3 of them are filled.
Yeah, Susan Johnson, Velez Legal Department, I believe there are 60 days to fill the vacancy of Ms. Hurtak, so
Dr. Long's position has been empty for
Yeah.
a while. Yeah.
60 days.
Yeah, more than 60 days, I
It's
know.
been like 6 months.
Yeah.
We've been
And-
missing
I know.
people.
An arborist. You're not an arborist, right?
Okay.
We had an arborist for 2 months, but they
Yeah.
left.
Then he disappeared.
So we've been without them for a long time.
It wasn't the lack of candy, I'll tell you that much.
Okay. All right, we'll see. I'll touch base with
Okay.
staff and find out.
But we
But
do
yes,
need
you
to pick a
should.
new vice chair, yeah?
Correct.
Okay. And it can't be an alternate, right?
Should not be an alternate. That's correct.
Okay.
Pretty limited.
That's why I was bringing up the alternates, just full circle here.
All right, well, who wants to be the vice chair?
It means that you're the chairman.
It means, right, it means primarily that if I don't show up, you gotta run the meeting. But other than that, I don't think, or if there's a conflict and I have to step out for some reason, you would have to step into the chair position. So, once again, there's only two options at this stage, right?
You can certainly have it if you want it. I was obviously the chair last year, so I've been there.
Yeah, I think I did.
But if you don't want to do it, I obviously know how to do it, so.
Yeah.
Your choice.
Go for it. I'm not quite comfortable with it
There
yet.
you go, man. All right.
Start taking a vote.
Well,
They might not agree.
all right, so Dustin has been nominated, Mr. Pastor has been nominated. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? All right, you're the vice chair.
Congratulations.
There you go.
Feels like a big step backwards.
A little bit. Okay, any other business? All right. Thank you.